And a reminder, you can watch a new episode of the Scripps News series in real life, where Casey Mendoza will spend some time with Hollywood stunt workers and get a look at how the profession is changing in TV and film. That airs Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on Scripps News. All right, and that'll do it for us here on Morning Rush on this Friday. I'm Lindsay Tuckman. Now let's send it to Scripps News Live with Veronica de la Cruz. Hey, Veronica, happy Friday
Lindsay,
to you.
Happy Friday to you, too. You know, who knew it was so difficult to become a stuntman? That is why I'm a journalist. All right, thanks, Lindsay. Well, right now, the entire country is awaiting a move from the Supreme Court as the Justice Department presses the court to protect access to the abortion pill. Well, we know right now about the emergency filing from the Biden administration. Also, firefighters rescuing babies from waist-high water as South Florida is inundated with more than 26 inches of rain in just one day. Plus, we're going to tell you a story that will restore your faith in the goodness of people and the unconditional love of pets.
Look what these people have done. And in a few hours.
We're going to take you along for Connor's last ride. Scripps News Live begins right now. We have lots of news to get to at this hour, but we begin right here with some breaking news coming from the Justice Department. Attorney General Merrick Garland announcing charges against more than 24 members of a notorious Mexican cartel. Welcome to Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica de la Cruz. Thank you so much for being with us on this Friday. Now, all 28 people charged in these new indictments are connected in some way to the fentanyl crisis here in the United States. According to the Attorney General, leaders of the Sinaloa cartel are named in these indictments, as well as the cartel's chemical suppliers, lab managers, traffickers, financiers, and others.
8 of those defendants are now in the custody of our international partners. We will be seeking their extradition to the United States to face charges in federal court. And we will be working closely with our partners in the government of Mexico to seek the extradition of other defendants. The United States government is using every tool at its disposal to combat the fentanyl epidemic.
Also named in the indictments are 3 sons of the infamous drug trafficker El Chapo, men who the DOJ say have earned a reputation of being more violent and vicious than their notorious father. And more news now to get to from the Justice Department at this hour. It is asking the Supreme Court to step in and protect access to the abortion drug mifepristone. This coming just one day before an appeals court ruling that would restrict the drug goes into effect. This emergency request was made in conjunction with the maker of mifepristone, and both have been pressing the court to make a decision before midnight tonight. Let's get you right out to Scripps News congressional correspondent Stephanie Liebergan, who joins us now live from Capitol Hill. And Stephanie, I know that you've been watching this closely, so go ahead and break down what the request is from the Justice Department right now. Why are they making this request exactly?
Hey, Veronica, good afternoon. Well, in both filings, both Danco, the pharmaceutical company, and the Department of Justice filing emergency appeals to the Supreme Court separately, both of them asking the court to put a stay on the lower court's ruling, both from the Northern District of Texas and the Fifth Circuit Appeals Court, to maintain the status quo and mifepristone access as we all know it right now. So Danco, the pharmaceutical company, in their filing, it really stresses the confusing and competing lower court rulings at hand. Remember, we've got the Northern District of Texas that said mifepristone should be off the market entirely. There's a federal judge in Washington state who said 17 states involved in a lawsuit there telling the FDA, no, you cannot change access to mifepristone at all. And then, of course, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals decision that rolled back the restrictions on mifepristone to its initial approval in 2000. So in the filing to the Supreme Court, Danco writes about what all of these conflicting things mean, writing that, quote, the result is an untenable limbo for Danco, for providers, for women, and for the healthcare systems, all trying to navigate these uncharted waters. And all after plaintiffs waited years and years before claiming irreparable injury and a need for an emergency injunction voiding the decades-long status quo. We heard a lot of similar issues and complaints from the Department of Justice in its filing to the Supreme Court, but the Justice Department Department also specifying what would happen immediately if the Supreme Court doesn't put these lower court rulings on hold. The Justice Department saying the generic version of mifepristone would no longer be available and approved on the market, that existing doses that are already out that some states have been stockpiling, those existing doses would then be misbranded and mislabeled based on the lower court rulings, and that relabeling the drug is a process that could take months, all of that impacting access for women across the country, Veronica.
Yeah, all right. So a lot going on, obviously, at the lower court level, Stephanie, but in terms of a timeline, and you did mention this, how soon can we expect to see a ruling from the Supreme Court?
Well, the Department of Justice in its appeal officially notes the 1 a.m. time frame is where they're asking the justices to act before that point, because it's at 1 a.m. tomorrow, so overnight tonight, when some of these lower court rulings and their impacts would go into effect. Now, it's really up to the justices how quickly they want to act. The Supreme Court certainly can act quickly when it needs to. Both of the appeals from Danco and from the Department of Justice went to Justice Alito. He is the justice who oversees appeals from the Fifth Court Circuit. But remember, Alito is also the justice that wrote the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. But I would expect in this case, Alito probably to bring these emergency stay requests to the fuller court for them to consider these stay requests as a whole.
All right, Stephanie Bergen reporting live for us from Capitol Hill. Stephanie, always appreciate it. Thank you. In Florida now, a bill banning abortions in the state after 6 weeks has now become law. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis making good on a promise to sign that bill as soon as it hit his desk. He did so last night, just hours after it cleared a vote in the Florida House. In the meantime, last night's vote didn't come without drama. While lawmakers were voting inside the House chambers, abortion access advocates were demonstrating outside. Those protests getting so heated that at one point lawmakers had to briefly pause proceedings. These protesters making a lot of noise, but in the end, their demands didn't make a difference. The House voted 70-40 to approve the Heartbeat Protection Act, one of the most restrictive abortion laws in this country. Scripps News correspondent Forrest Sanders reports for us now on last night's contentious vote that took place in Tallahassee.
This, of course, was a very, very controversial policy, and one of the reasons why we saw 9 members not even participating in this vote, no vote from them. But we did see Republicans joining with Democrats in opposition, but it wasn't enough to stop that GOP supermajority from pushing this policy through and onto the governor's desk. You could hear them outside the chamber doors and inside. Protesters removed as they desperately tried to shout down a bill they called dangerous and potentially deadly.
This bill, cited as the Heartbeat Protection Act, values and protects life.
SB 300 cuts Florida law from 15 to 6 weeks. Exceptions made for rape, incest, and human trafficking up to 15 weeks. Only fatal fetal conditions beyond that.
Don't want an abortion? Don't have one.
Debate on the House floor was fierce. Democrats warned 6 weeks is before many know they're pregnant, suggesting women turn to dangerous alternatives without access.
How many more women will get hurt in the meantime? The meantime matters. It is a matter of life and death.
Who is for this bill? There's going to be a reckoning, members. There's going to be a reckoning. I hope you don't get caught up in it.
Republicans fired back, noting 6 weeks is around the time cardiac activity is detected, which supporters call a heartbeat.
And why is that important? Because a beating heart is how our society defines the presence of life.
Here we value life from conception to the casket, because we believe that life has value.
Democrats did secure a few defections, but it wasn't enough to offset the powerful GOP supermajority.
70 yeas, 40 nays, Mr. Speaker.
So the bill passes.
Even with his signature, the 6-week ban needs one more thing to take effect. The Florida Supreme Court. Justices set to consider the current 15-week law likely later this year. If they find it violates Florida's broad privacy protections, the 6-week ban would be gone as well. That's the latest out here at the Capitol. I'm Forrest Sanders reporting.
Now, the head of the Florida Democrats, former Agricultural Commissioner Nikki Fried, slammed the bill's passage and signing, saying it runs counter to the will of Floridians and the American people. In fact, a Gallup poll conducted in May of last year puts national support for abortion rights as high as 85%. Speaking outside the State House yesterday, Fried warned that Americans should be wary of Governor Ron DeSantis and that if he ascends politically to higher office, a 6-week abortion ban could become the law nationwide.
It's not just the majority of Floridians. It's 75% of Floridians do not agree with this. They do not want their rights to be taken away. And I need this to be very clear to every Floridian and every American who is watching this. He will not stop with Florida.
Abortion restrictions are just one in a series of new laws in Florida that may have some people staying away from the Sunshine State. There have also been concerns over anti-LGBTQ plus legislation and a statewide push to end advanced studies on Black history. And now some who live in the state are worried that this shift in policy could take a toll on Florida's crucial tourism dollars. Joel Lopez of Scripps News West Palm Beach has the details for us.
An Equality Florida representative tells me that they've seen a surge in people asking if it's safe to visit after a series of laws and policies have gone into effect. Now they say that their message to travelers is come at your own risk. A travel advisory warning is in effect for Florida. As Equality Florida says, there's a dark cloud dimming over the Sunshine State.
Several people have talked to me on the phone and said, what is happening down there? Like they're just kind of like in shock.
This, as the civil rights organization says that new laws are impacting LGBTQ plus issues, reproductive rights, gun laws, and racial topics.
Whether they're heterosexual or they're gay. You know, I think they'd feel the same way, that you wouldn't want to take your family to a country if you didn't feel that there was safety in that place.
Short-term rental host Carl McCaskill says changes in Florida have raised concerns for his clients.
What's happening in Florida, it's like national news, and it feels caustic to them, and a lot of people have expressed that they may not continue to come here.
McCaskill says West Palm Beach is very inclusive, and tourism agency Discover the Palm Beaches reported that last year a record 9.1 million visitors came to the Palm Beaches.
What impact do you think this advisory is going to have?
Well, I think the most important impact it can have is to help people make informed decisions.
Brandon Wolf with Equality Florida says this is the first time the organization has had to issue a travel advisory and is encouraging people to get involved and be active with social issues in the state.
And that's going to require all of us rolling up our sleeves and doing the work. So we encourage you, regardless of whether you make the decision to travel to Florida or not, we ask you to get engaged in the fight.
I asked Equality Florida how long they plan to keep this travel advisory issued for, and they tell me as long as these policies are in place.
And that was Joel Lopez reporting there for us. We have much more to come for you in this hour of Scripps News Live. The massive fire that's been raging at an Indiana recycling plant has finally been extinguished, but health concerns are still lingering in the city of Richmond. Also, widespread flood damage across much of South Florida after more than 26 inches of rain falls in just one day. Plus, government officials have been investigating the leak of sensitive Pentagon documents, say that they have traced them back to a 21-year-old airman. We have team coverage of the investigation into Jack Teixeira, as well as his arrest. That's on the other side of this break. We'll be right back.
Is your teen addicted to social media? Are they showing signs of depression or eating disorders? Listen up. This could concern you. A whistleblower has reported that their platform was knowingly exposing children to dangerous topics and posts. The whistleblower claims that this algorithm is also causing body image issues, eating disorders, and more. What's worse is that social media company was shown the research and had done nothing about it. Turns out they've known about it for years. If your child has shown signs of suicide risk, mental health issues, and/or an eating disorder, you could be entitled to compensation. We're representing other families just like yours. Do not delay. Morgan & Morgan, for the people.
Call 855-800-6927. 855-800-6927. That's 855-800-6927. Call now.
Sure, you should teach him to ride a bike. Then use Greenlight and teach him how to invest in bikes. Teach him to be smart about money, and he'll go far.
Super far. Oh, hey, Mom.
Navigate the world of money together. Invest in your best investment. Greenlight.
My little family is me, Aria, and Jade. Just the three of us girls. Here, this way. I never thought twice about feeding her kibble, but about 2 years ago, I realized she was overweight. She was always out of breath. That's when I decided to introduce the farmer's dog to her diet. It's just so fresh that she literally gets bubbles in her mouth. Now she's a lot more active. She's able to join us on our adventures, and we're all able to do things as a family.
Get started at betterforthem.com.
The Athletic. Subscribe today.
Action!
Stunts have become more specialized because everything has to be bigger and better.
What was the moment where you decided you wanted to be a stunt driver?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's happening.
We're just very fortunate to have been able to work on everything everywhere all at once. I'm still very starstruck, to be honest.
Next Gen Stunts on In Real Life. New episode Sunday night at 9/8 Central. Only on Scripps News.
The international manhunt behind the leak of critical Pentagon documents concerning the war in Ukraine is now over. Investigators following the trail of evidence didn't find a sophisticated network of Russian hackers at the end of it. Instead, all that footwork led law enforcement to this man, 21-year-old Massachusetts Air National Guardsman Jack Teixeira. News helicopters hovering over his family's southern Massachusetts home captured the moment he came face to face with FBI agents, guns drawn. Scripps News has team coverage of this investigation and arrest for you with national security correspondent Sasha Ingber. She's reporting on how the information was circulated across the web. But let's go and begin right here with Scripps News political correspondent Kevin Cirilli, who joins us now live. And Kevin, what I think is really remarkable about this entire thing is that the government doesn't even believe that the suspect leaked these documents to cause harm or maybe for the greater good, but instead they believe that he was just trying to impress his friends.
He was showing off, according to the court documents released earlier this morning in a Boston courtroom, as the authorities have now charged him, this 21-year-old, with unauthorized retention and transmission of national defense information, unauthorized removal of classified information, and defense materials. Now, in addition to that, a press conference at the Department of Justice just concluding, where Attorney General Merrick Garland was asked about the implications of this investigation. Take a listen to what he just said moments ago.
The Department of Defense is leading an important effort now to evaluate and review the national security implications, and most important, to conduct a review of the methods of access, accountability, and control procedures that the department has, so that something like this can never happen again.
Now, Jack Teixeira, who is charged in this case, the 21-year-old, he was accessing classified documents, hundreds of pages of worth, in which paragraphs, according to the court documents allegations, were then leaked on a social media platform in which he was revealing via a chat platform highly classified information about military movements, Veronica, in the Ukraine as it relates to Russia's war with Ukraine. Also leaking analysis of other countries. And this is the type of classified information that requires an individual to have a national security clearance, something that this individual obtained several years ago. Now, President Biden, mind you, who is traveling overseas this week in Ireland, was asked shortly before these charges about the implications that the leak might have on national security and geopolitical security in the Ukraine war. Take a listen to what President Biden said.
Well, I'm not concerned about the leakages, and I'm concerned that it happened. But there's nothing contemporaneous that I'm aware of that is of great consequence.
So President Biden saying that the leak has at this point not jeopardized in terms of the geopolitical situation happening in Europe. Now, separately, what has been launched as a cause of this has been a widespread conversation rooted here in Washington about how individuals who have access to classified information, how they are treating such intelligence. And in fact, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin launching an internal review as a result of this, and saying that they are conducting a review of our intelligence access, accountability, and control procedures within the department to inform our efforts to prevent this kind of incident from happening again. Either way, this has launched a massive conversation, and the Attorney General was asked at that press conference earlier this morning about whether or not he would rule out if they are looking into other individuals or even if there was some type of foreign connection to this leak. And he dodged that question, quite frankly, and declined to answer that specific question and said that he was unable to comment because the investigation is still ongoing. And the final point that I would make here as it relates to this is that there was widespread concern that this 21-year-old Veronica, Jack Teixeira, we haven't seen a leak of this kind since Edward Snowden. And so given the heightened geopolitical tensions in the world currently, no doubt Washington on alert for other potential leakers, and this investigation is still very much ongoing.
Absolutely right about that, Kevin. Still a lot of questions, not a lot of answers at this point, but we, of course, appreciate you staying on top of it. Kevin's really live for us at the White House right now. Yeah. Let's go ahead and bring in national security correspondent Sasha Ingber now, who's been learning a lot from her sources about how these documents were accessed and how quickly they were able to circulate across the web.
Even though the Defense Department and the FBI have been very, very careful about sharing information about their investigation, we've really been able to piece things together here. This young National Air Guardsman, he worked in what is called the cyber transport systems. He enlisted in 2019 and received a Medal of Achievement in 2022. He also was promoted, according to a Facebook post that I saw. Now, Bellingcat Research Director Eric Toller, he's one of the people who broke the story in the New York Times today that this was Jack Teixeira. And he told me that Teixeira was really eager to share this classified information with a small community on a messaging platform called Discord, that he wanted to impress them. This channel was called Bear versus Pig. Bear as an indication for Russia and pig as an indication for Ukraine. That is to many a derogatory term. Toller did say that this was a community that was far right. It was fringe. There were a lot of racist slurs in this. He said it was not connected to Russian intelligence. But another aspect here is that there was essentially a kid who was in this community. He's seeing these documents be shared, and he doesn't buy them. So then he goes and posts them somewhere else. I want to play you what Toller said.
When I talked to some of his friends, they didn't think that these documents are real. They thought they were fake, or they thought he was just kind of like trolling them with a lot of these documents. They kind of had doubts that he was sharing real stuff. That's one of the reasons why one of the guys from the server posted them onto a different one. He thought he was trolling the other server when he was posting these fake documents. He didn't realize they were real. And when the news broke, when the New York Times broke their story about this, the Pentagon and Justice Department investigation, they were like, wait, those are real? So.
And then this information then spread to sites like 4chan. It spread to the messaging app Telegram. We saw it get doctored. And of course, the intelligence community here has had a big headache on its hands as it rushes to figure out what's going on. The Washington Post reported last night on a video that we have not seen that has to do with this alleged leaker supposedly shouting racial slurs and firing a rifle on camera. Now, the real question here is how exactly did the U.S. intelligence community go so long, months, as early back as late of 2022, without noticing this? And why did this man have access to so much? Let's remember, this guy is 21 years old. Well, certainly digital forensics played a big role in trying to understand who he was and what he was up to. A former senior intelligence official tells me that today the scraping technology that has been used on social media to try to monitor these officers, something that happens in-house and is also farmed out to other companies, that it's missing the mark. And the thing is, this was a private channel, so you need to go through legal pathways to even be able to monitor that. There's also a new vetting system that came about in 2018 that also didn't seem to catch him before all of this happened.
All right, Sasha, thank you so much. Sasha Ingber reporting there for us. Coming up in your 3 p.m. Eastern hour of Scripps News Live, we're going to be speaking with a cybersecurity expert who has the same security clearances that this suspect had. Gordon Lawson will break it down and explain what kind of information Jack Teixeira had access to and why sites like Discord have become a hotbed for this kind of illegal activity. He'll be joining us live at 3:15 p.m. Eastern straight ahead. In the meantime, coming up next on Scripps News Live, it's been burning now for days, but the massive fire at an Indiana recycling plant is finally out. What we know right now about the health concerns that linger in the city of Richmond. Also, South Florida attempting to dry out after getting soaked. We're going to take you inside this historic rainfall and flooding event. That's next.
Hi, I'm Kirk Kaiser, and did you know the average funeral costs around $10,000? And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Don't let that happen. Call right now. And if you're over 50, you can get up to $30,000 in affordable life insurance, and your acceptance is guaranteed. That's right. If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam and no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Your coverage begins as soon as your application is received. Don't wait until it's too late.
Just call 800-760-7793.
Coverage is guaranteed regardless of your health and cannot be canceled without your approval. Don't leave your family with a huge bill for your funeral. With one fast and easy call, get up to $30,000 in affordable life insurance to help cover funeral expenses and credit card debt, and maybe even leave something for your kids and your grandkids. Remember, if you're over 50, you can't be turned down, regardless of your health. There's no medical exam and no health questions. Best of all, your rates start as low as $5 a week, and your rate will never increase. Nothing is more important than family. So don't leave them with a lot of bills to pay when you're gone. Don't leave your family with a lot of bills to pay for your funeral. Call right now. Acceptance is guaranteed. Call right now.
Call now. Call 800-760-7793. That's 800-760-7793.
Who needs pet insurance? Take Lucy. A leg sprain cost her mom $600 in vet bills. Butterbean's tiny sneezes turned into a $1,000 respiratory infection. Eddie ate a $4,000 sock. Pet insurance from Physicians Mutual Insurance Company can help with vet bills for these guys and for your pets too, no matter what their age or breed. This coverage pays for things like emergencies, hospital stays, surgeries, even wellness with no lifetime limit on benefits. You can see any vet you like and get up to 100% reimbursement. So now your pets can get all the care they need to live a happy, healthy life. Because when a cutie like this needs to go to the vet, you'll want to be prepared. Help protect the pets you love with coverage from Physicians Mutual Insurance Company. Call or go online now for all the details.
Physicians Mutual, Physicians Mutual.
We need a small business loan fast.
I got this.
Loan cannon!
There's a better way to get a fast small business loan. Go to OnDeck.com, and if approved, get your funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
Confused by all the Camp Lejeune toxic water commercials? Let me answer some of your questions.
Are claims filed against the U.S. Marine Corps?
No. The U.S. government has set aside billions of dollars for those who have suffered. The Marine Corps will not be impacted.
Will a Camp Lejeune claim affect my VA benefits?
No. According to the VA, your right to VA benefits will remain intact. If you have questions about a Camp Lejeune claim, call the Driscoll firm now for a free consultation. 1-800-273-4800.
Do you have a box of videotapes, film reels, or photos that are degrading?
Legacy Box professionally converts them to DVDs, thumb drive, or the cloud.
Legacy Box is simple and safe, with over 1 million satisfied customers.
Visit legacybox.com.
All right, I'm gonna go back and get your mommy and daddy, all right, bud?
Wow, some really scary stuff. These images coming out of South Florida right now have been frightening. Look at that. Firefighters with Fort Lauderdale Fire Rescue capturing the moment that they were able to rescue a little boy from these waist-high floodwaters that had taken over the boy's home. Now, first responders all over South Florida have been pulling off rescues like the one that you were just able to see for more than a day now as the region continues to grapple with historic destructive rainfall. Now, the good news, the torrential rains have finally stopped, but it's going to take a while for the floodwaters to recede. And in many communities, the damage is already done. In the meantime, we're tracking the potential for severe weather in a number of states today, with 13 million people from Missouri to Arkansas at risk for strong thunderstorms, hail, and tornadoes. Scripps News meteorologist Scott Withers has the latest now on the flooding in South Florida and the severe weather that we're facing today.
Rainfall in Fort Lauderdale has people there just trudging through flooded yards and streets. The amount of rain that fell in just 24 hours, well, it's unheard of. It's finally stopped, but the floodwaters, they're slowly receding.
Looks like the Titanic.
Scary moments there as a torrent of waters from 26 inches of rain gushes into a parking garage in Fort Lauderdale. People rushing to get out as that stuff poured in. Now, from the air, you can see the extent of the flooding. Neighborhoods through Broward County swamped under feet of water. This was the third highest one-day rain event in U.S. history. The Fort Lauderdale airport's underwater. You can see there on the tarmac, inspectors checking the runways at the airport to make sure it wasn't damaged before they could reopen it. Now, more flash flooding in the upper Midwest. Temperatures in the 80s causing rapid snowmelt, flooding farms. Police encouraging everyone to stay off the roads because roads are, well, they're just being washed away. In North Dakota, the snow melting so fast, neighborhood roads turning into rivers. That little guy right there, the 4-year-old, making the best of it, casting out a line. Unfortunately, didn't catch anything. Salt Lake City lining the roads with sandbags as water from the quickly melting snow in the mountains is just creating a torrent of floodwaters down through the streets, turning into raging rivers. Water, fortunately, staying out of the house. On the national satellite, you can see the moisture there still streaming up into the area, into the Rockies there, and it's mixing with some cold air. That's giving us a snowstorm way up there in Wyoming, causing some snow there. This is going to move east, but keep an eye right there. That is the area you want to walk on. That line, that's where we're going to see the storms, the severe weather popping up later today. Is that moisture, the warm air, the cold air, they all collide. And this system, this is what caused all the problem for Florida. Spinning inland now, no more problems really in Florida, but it is going to cause some rain over South Carolina. The severe weather alerts, the green across the upper Midwest is the flash flooding, red flag warnings in parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, and the Southwest. But the threat today, strong thunderstorms, hail, and tornadoes in Kansas and Nebraska. On Saturday, the threat intensifies and shifts to the lower Mississippi River Valley, where 13 million people will be in the risk zone from St. Louis down through Arkansas and into central Louisiana. Those storms on Saturday could drop very large hail and a few powerful tornadoes, so everyone in the risk zone needs to be severe weather ready.
Now to Indiana, where officials there say an industrial fire that forced thousands of people to evacuate their homes has now been fully extinguished. It started on Tuesday at a plastic recycling plant in Richmond. Officials say they will now test the air and water to determine whether residents can return home safely. Many have already expressed concerns about the fire's potential impact on their health, and so far, the EPA hasn't detected toxic compounds, but the state fire marshal says the smoke plumes were, quote, definitely toxic. And the cause of that blaze in the meantime remains unclear, but some city officials blame the building's owner for not addressing the factory's fire hazards. Coming up next on Scripps News Live, Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas is facing new allegations of ethical misconduct. What we know right now about the property sale that he failed to report. But first, the Justice Department pressing Justice Thomas and his colleagues to make a decision about the future of the abortion pill before midnight tonight. We'll have the details when Scripps News Live comes back.
If you're living with diabetes, this sound may save your life. A continuous glucose monitor provides glucose readings and alerts you in real time to potential lows and harmful spikes without painful finger sticks. It's easy, convenient, and proven to lower your A1C. If you administer insulin, you may qualify for a continuous glucose monitor at no cost to you. Call now. It could save your life. Just call 800-233-6176. This new GCM technology immediately eliminates your pain and helps you make better diabetes treatment decisions. That means no more guessing. It's easy to see your glucose number any time of the day. Call now and get free shipping. Plus, we'll bill your insurance company for you. Satisfaction guaranteed. Don't wait until it's too late. Take control of your diabetes now. Just call 800-233-6176. That's 800-233-6176.
That's $78.29.
I've only got $50. Take out the cheese puffs and the broccoli. I mean, who likes broccoli?
I don't.
Only $22.87 to go.
It would be faster with the Empower app. Empower Cash Advance gives you up to $250 instantly. No late fees, interest, or credit checks.
I've got money. Keep the cheese puffs, but leave out the broccoli.
Get Empower Cash Advance up to $250 instantly. Download the Empower app today.
Workers' comp was about 20% of my total expenses.
I needed a workers' comp policy that wasn't going to strangle my business.
When we got the quote back from Pi, it was a sigh of relief.
We did it online, and it was done very quickly.
We saved about 30% when we switched to Pi.
Working with Pi was extremely easy. I can grow my company while not breaking the bank.
Ask your agent or get a quote at easyaspi.com.
I'm Jason Bellini in Ukraine, reporting for Scripps News.
In a war half a world away,
You learn pretty fast when you just survive.
there are stories you will never forget. Stay with Scripps News.
All right, 35 minutes after the hour now. Happy Friday to you. Welcome back to Scripps News Live. Good to see you today. I'm Veronica Cruz. It is time now to get you up to speed on the biggest stories that we're tracking for you, starting with this. The Justice Department asking the Supreme Court to block a ruling restricting access to the abortion pill, mifepristone. The emergency request was made in conjunction with the drugs manufacturer, Danco Laboratories, and it comes just 2 days after a Texas appeals court ruled that the pill should remain available in the United States, but with limitations. So if the high court doesn't respond, the lower court's ruling will take effect tomorrow. In the meantime, new details surfacing about the financial relationship between Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and a Republican mega donor. According to ProPublica, billionaire Harlan Crow bought 3 real estate properties from Justice Thomas in 2014. Thomas received more than $133,000 from the sale, but failed to report it. Ethics law experts say that his actions appear to violate the law. This follows earlier reporting that Thomas didn't disclose luxury vacations that were paid for by Crow. The Supreme Court is rejecting an emergency plea in the meantime from private universities to block a $6 billion student loan settlement. Student loan borrowers sued 3 schools, arguing those loans should have been canceled because the institutions misled them. A judge sided with the borrowers last year to have their debt canceled. The colleges wanted the high court to hold the settlement, but the justices refused. This case is unrelated to lawsuits challenging President Biden's forgiveness program. All right, so Americans have until July 17th to claim old tax refunds from 2019. The IRS is saying nearly 1.5 million of you have yet to claim your refund, and that totals, get this, almost $1.5 billion. The agency has a 3-year deadline for people to claim that money, and the deadline and the federal tax filing deadline are typically on the same day. But officials have extended the deadline this year because of the COVID pandemic. Now, while some people are scrambling to claim their old refund, procrastinators, listen up. You have a Tuesday deadline to file your 2022 tax return. The IRS is warning that some filers will receive a smaller refund this year, and data shows that the average refund is $300 less than it was last year, which is a 10% decline. Now, the change is partly due to pandemic-era relief programs that are expiring. Brandon Arnold is the Executive Vice President of the National Taxpayers Union and joins us now live. Brandon, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Brandon, so who does this impact? Should everybody be bracing themselves for a smaller refund this year? Does this apply to all Americans?
It'll apply to a lot of Americans. Millions of Americans are going to be affected by this because, as you said, the child tax credit went down in value from 2021 to 2022. We increased that during the pandemic from $2,000 up to $3,000 or $3,600 if you had younger children. That reverted back to $2,000 last year. That's going to affect millions of Americans. There are a few other provisions, including less generosity when it comes to charitable giving for tax purposes. That is also going to take a bite or maybe a nibble out of some people's tax refunds. And as well, we also have the stimulus payments. Those stimulus payments that went out in 20 and 21, those are gone. So people didn't get those in 2022. A lot of people received those in the form of direct deposit, but some Americans got those when it came to settling up their taxes on tax day. So for all of those reasons, we are going to see smaller refunds. We've already started to see smaller refunds to the tune of several $100s on average.
All right, do you have any good news for us here? Because it seems like every year the tax code changes, right? Like you just said, the child tax credit went down, charitable giving, that went down as well. Why is the tax code always changing? And do you have any good news? Is there any good news in terms of a credit that Americans might not know a lot about?
Well, if you like getting audited, I have very good news for you because the IRS just got a huge budget increase. And that means that it's really, really important for Americans, to be serious here, really, really important for Americans to make sure that they double, triple, quadruple check their taxes before submitting them, because you don't want any red flags that may trigger not just a delay in getting your refund, but potentially an audit. So you want to make sure your taxes are completed in a very accurate fashion. And if you can, by all means, do them electronically. You're less likely to make errors, and you're more likely to have those tax returns processed in an expeditious fashion if they are done electronically. A little more than 90% of tax returns are filed electronically these days, but there's still millions that come in a paper fashion, and the IRS trudges through those in a very slow, archaic manner that you do not want to subject yourselves to if you can all avoid it.
You know, no one wants to get audited, so you raise a really, really important point there. No one wants to leave money on the table either. So what are your thoughts? Is it better to itemize your deductions, or is it better to just take this standard deduction to avoid potentially being audited?
Well, you wouldn't want to do that just to avoid being audited, because audit risks still remain relatively low, especially if you dot every I and cross every T. What you want to do is the revenue maximizing strategy here. So a lot of people, that means doing your taxes both ways and finding out which way yields a larger refund or a smaller tax liability. So it's smart to double check that work. You know, back in 2017, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, that doubled the standard deduction. So that meant that a lot of people moved into the standard deduction category. That's a much more streamlined fashion to complete your taxes. It's much quicker. It actually reduced compliance times. We saw people spending less time doing their taxes. Unfortunately, because the tax code has gotten significantly more complicated, in large part due to pandemic era policies, but also some big tax changes that took place under the last Congress and the Biden administration, we've seen tax complexity increase. People are spending more time than they used to completing their taxes, and that's really unfortunate.
No, you got that right, because I'm going to spend the entire weekend doing my taxes. I'm one of the procrastinators out there. I know that April 18th is the tax filing deadline. I'm sure there are lots of people out there in the same boat. So what happens if someone isn't able to meet the deadline? What should they be doing right now? And what if they do miss the deadline?
Well, you know, if you miss the deadline, you could be subject to penalties. You could have to pay interest on the amount that you owe the IRS. So you don't want to be late. Now, you do want to wait to the last minute if you owe the IRS money, because you want to hold on to those dollars as long as you possibly can before sending them off to the federal government. By contrast, if you are expecting a refund, you want to get that in as soon as possible. But the most important thing here is to make sure you do your taxes accurately and properly. You do not want to trigger an audit, and you do not want to have a back and forth with the IRS if they do happen to catch something, even if it's correct. But you don't want to have that back and forth with the IRS, because that can be very, very stressful and time consuming. And that does happen. Sometimes the IRS finds red flags that are completely nothing burgers, but they, for whatever reason, trigger the IRS system, and that can create headaches. So you don't want to give the IRS any reason whatsoever to come knocking on your door.
Yeah, no nothing burgers for sure. So Brandon, I want to ask you, because we know that we're going to see refunds decrease by about 10% or $300 a refund. Is this the norm moving forward? I mean, are we seeing this decrease because of the COVID pandemic, or should we just expect our refunds to get smaller and smaller and smaller every year?
Oh, man, you said you wanted good news. Unfortunately, I don't have it here because the standard deduction And a lot of those policies that were changed in 2017 for the 2018 tax year, those are scheduled to disappear in a few years. So we've already seen the child tax credit revert from $3,000 to $2,000. In a few years, it'll drop down to $1,000. So we could see even smaller refunds in a few years. Now, we still have a couple years to fix that. I'm hopeful that Congress will address this. It's something that I work on, my organization works on, is improving the tax code to make sure that some of these changes that are scheduled, including the halving of the standard deduction, as well as the child tax credit, do not indeed take effect, that we can extend those policies of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act so people do not have huge reductions in the size of their refunds a few years down the road.
Yeah, please, please, please do something about that. Next time we talk, I want you to have some good news for us.
I'll do my best.
Brandon Arnold from the National Taxpayers Union. Brandon, thank you so much for stopping by today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Coming up next on Scripps News Live, one-time running mates turn political and legal rivals set to cross paths at the NRA convention. We'll have the details. Also, former President Trump sitting in for a second deposition at the New York Attorney General's office. What we know right now about his testimony. That's next.
Are you on Medicaid and Medicare?
The U.S. government recently announced that 12.2 million citizens are eligible for additional benefits beyond what they received from the original Medicare or Medicaid.
These benefits may include $2,500 of dental credit, $900 of pharmacy credit, plus you could be adding up to $164 back into your Social Security check every month. Certain beneficiaries qualify for specific benefits based on income verification.
It's easy to see if you qualify.
Call Go Medicare at 800-718-0414.
And see if you're one of over 12 million who may qualify.
For $2,500 of dental credit, $900 of pharmacy credit. Plus, you could be adding up to $164 back into your Social Security check every month. Certain beneficiaries qualify for specific benefits based on income verification.
This call is 100% free with no obligation to enroll.
At 800-718-0414. Are you on Medicaid and Medicare?
The U.S. government recently announced that 12.2 million citizens are eligible for additional benefits beyond what they received from the original Medicare or Medicaid.
These benefits may include $2,500 of dental credit, $900 of pharmacy credit. Plus, you could be adding up to $164 back into your Social Security check every month. Certain beneficiaries qualify for specific benefits based on income verification. Call Go Medicare at 800-718-0414. If you have recently turned 65, you may be able to enroll in a new plan today that may include benefits like $2,500 of dental credit, $900 of pharmacy credit.
This call is 100% free with no obligation to enroll. So call today.
At 800-718-0414. That's 800-718-0414.
You're looking pretty good, Mr. Johnson. But we need to take some x-rays today.
That's all.
Yes, x-rays are expensive, but the front desk said you recently enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan with extra benefits that now cover today's x-rays and cleaning costs.
Okay.
Well, Medicare Parts A and B do not cover your routine dental coverage like cleanings, fillings, or x-rays. Yes, you have a Medicare Part C plan, commonly called Medicare Advantage. Medicare Part C plans cover everything in Part A and Part B, plus extra benefits like dental, vision, and hearing.
Wow. That's great that my plan includes dental coverage that helps pay for these costs.
Yes, Mr. Johnson. A Medicare Part C plan could include dental coverage that pays for routine dental exams and teeth cleanings, dental x-rays, fillings, tooth extractions, root canals, dentures, implants, and crowns.
If you're losing coverage, moving, or new to Medicare, call to speak with a licensed insurance agent. You don't get a plan with these benefits automatically, so it's always good to call to see if there's a plan with extra benefits available in your zip code. If you don't have a Medicare Part C plan, call now because there may be plans available with additional benefits that are simply not covered under Medicare Parts A and B, like routine dental coverage. In fact, 24 million Medicare beneficiaries do not have any dental coverage. Here's the good news. If you're on Medicare, you can call even if you called last year. We will check to see if there's a Part C plan available in your area with additional benefits. Remember, you don't get Medicare Part C benefits automatically, so call now for your free 2023 no-obligation Medicare benefits review. Just call 800-614-5203. 800-614-5203.
Back to Scripps News Live. Former President Donald Trump calling the lawsuit from the New York Attorney General ridiculous, but he answered questions about it yesterday for nearly 7 hours. Letitia James sued Trump last year, claiming he and his family exaggerated his net worth by billions of dollars in order to get better terms from banks and insurers. Now, the first time he was deposed in the case, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself hundreds of times. Trump's former Attorney General Bill Barr says this lawsuit is politically motivated, but he admits that isn't always the case.
I said he's frequently his own worst enemy, and he digs himself holes, and he does some things that are reckless that are clearly going to give rise to investigations and look into them. And that included both the documents in Mar-a-Lago and the January 6th episode and the events after December 14th and trying to reverse the election when all the states had certified their votes.
The lawsuit is scheduled to go to trial in October. In the meantime, a federal judge has rejected a request by Trump's lawyers to delay another trial this month on claims that he raped E. Jean Carroll in the 1990s. The judge is allowing Trump's attorneys to gather more evidence on who is paying Carroll's lawyers. Word that a major contributor to Democrats helped finance her lawsuit prompted Trump's attorneys to make the request. Earlier in the week, his lawyers asked for a 1-month delay, and they argued that the former president can't get a fair trial after publicity over his arrest on charges connected to hush money payments. Trump and former Vice President Mike Pence will both be in Indianapolis today. The one-time running mates and now possible rivals for the Republican nomination will speak at the NRA, or the National Rifle Association's annual meeting. Pence hasn't announced he is running for president yet, but he has been visiting early voting primary states. Trump turned on Pence when he confirmed President Biden's victory in the 2020 election. And he has been battling to keep Pence from testifying in the special counsel's investigation of the Capitol insurrection. Up next on Scripps News Live, a story that's going to restore your faith in the goodness of people and the unconditional love of pets. We're going to take you along for Connor's last ride. That's next.
We were all just a happy little family. And then when COVID started, it started getting harder and harder. When I first heard of COVID-19, I was kind of scared.
A lot of fear was, how are we going to pay the rent? What's going to happen with no money coming in? What are we going to do about electricity? What are we going to do about food and everything?
And then they shut down the school.
In these uncertain times, millions of children in America are wondering where their next meal will come from.
The only time they eat is at school. So when you take that food source away with a family that's already facing food insecurity, it has astronomical effects.
Whether kids are in school or out of school, No Kid Hungry is always there. With help from caring people like you, we're partnering with schools and community groups to ensure children get the meals they need to grow, thrive, and succeed. When you join with No Kid Hungry with a gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, you'll help provide healthy meals and hope to kids in schools and communities across America.
This is where those children are getting the bulk of their food, calories, and nutrition for the day, the week, the year.
Please join us today to help end child hunger in America. Call or go online right now with your gift of only $19 a month. Use your credit card and you'll receive this No Kid Hungry t-shirt to show you're a part of the team that's helping feed kids and change lives.
What we will do is make sure that no one goes hungry on our watch.
Thank you.
The need to help our nation's children is as urgent as ever. So please, call this number or go online to helpnokidhungry.org to feed hungry kids today.
How
How does Klein Inspector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein Inspector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein Inspector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein Inspector.
This is the Momsticle course. You gotta be quick, have your hands free, and always remember piano lessons. We're late. Oliver! So you need shoes smart enough to keep up. Kiziks are the truly hands-free shoe that can handle anything Mother throws at you. Where did you get that chainsaw? Amazon? It's time to upgrade to the original hands-free smart shoe. Free shipping, free returns, free the whales, free Britney. You get the point. Get your own Kiziks today.
When what's happening in the world hits home.
What strikes me is how many children are here.
And when reporting the news matters the most. Scripps News reports. Tonight at 8, 7 Central. Only on Scripps News.
All right, a question for you. How do you repay a pet for a lifetime of love and companionship? Well, the answer for the Florida woman that you're about to meet was to give her beloved dog one last ride. Lauren Green didn't think anyone would respond to her Facebook post about her plan to drive her dog Connor along for his favorite route just one more time, but people did respond, some of whom were complete strangers. Megan McRoberts with Scripps News West Palm Beach introduces us to the good people who turned out to honor one very good boy.
Despite spotty rain, gusty winds, nothing could stop this growing crowd from making signs, waiting with anticipation for a woman and her dog to drive by.
Well, we love dogs.
It's all because they saw this Facebook post not even hours earlier. Lauren Green making a plea any pet owner can feel to their core. Her dog Connor meeting the end of a battle with cancer, a date set to be put down the next morning. So she asked for help, making his last car ride on his favorite routes around Fort Pierce more special for him. Knowing just yelling hi or coming by to give Connor a little hug or pet would light him up.
We've driven this route for 3 years. Every night we drive. And he wags his tail like this when he sees everybody out.
Lauren never imagining so many would drop everything they were doing, even bringing treats from Taco Dive by the jetty to Cobb's Landing and everywhere in between.
Look what these people have done. And in a few hours.
Certainly not the biggest news of the day. Just a story about one family trying to get through a tough time so many can relate to.
I lost this too, not that long ago. Her boys, clients on a day-to-day basis, he's kept me going out to himself, so we know what it feels like.
Made a little easier with the power of social media and the love from a community that embraces a small town feel to give one more special memory. Megan McRoberts for Scripps News.
Such a great idea. It's so hard to lose a pet. That was Megan McRoberts there with that report. We have much more coverage to come for you in your next hour of Scripps News Live. I'm Veronica Cruz, and we are back after this.
Hey, Caleb, what's going on?
Homework. I'm supposed to learn how to cook a soufflé.
Ooh, French. Impressive.
Oui, vous devriez l'apprendre. Ça vous fait paraître plus intelligent.
I have no clue what you're saying.
Yeah, I said that you should learn French because it makes you sound smart.
I got you.
You know what else is smart, Alec? Donating to Shriners Hospitals for Children.
I thought you'd say that. And you know what? You're right.
Just think what it would be like if people didn't support Shriners Hospitals for Children every month.
I don't even want to think about it. I know so many kids whose lives are completely different because of the specialized care Shriners Hospitals for Children provides.
Yeah, like Sebastian, who can stand now.
Yeah, and the best part is it's so easy to become a monthly supporter. All you need to do is call the number on your screen or go to loveshriners.org. Your support will make sure our amazing doctors and nurses keep helping kids like us who need them now and in the future.
Hey, Allie, do you think I could try this part?
Go for it, buddy.
When you call right now and give $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, we'll send you your very own Love to the Rescue blanket as a reminder of all the kids you're helping every day.
Your monthly support makes a huge difference for kids like us.
So please, call now or go to loveshriners.org to give. On behalf of all the kids you're helping, Alec and I just want to say thank you.
You got that right. Thank you so much. Please call the number on your screen or go to loveshriners.org with your monthly support right away. Your support shows you care too.
Hey there, TJF. You made it to Friday. Congratulations. Thank you so much for staying with us on this Friday afternoon. It is now nearly 1 p.m. in the East and 10 a.m. out West. I'm Veronica Cruz. Welcome back to Scripps News Live. And we begin this hour with several Republican presidential hopefuls appearing tonight at the National Rifle Association's annual convention. This convention is taking place in Indianapolis, which is a 4-hour drive north of Nashville, where 3 students and 3 school employees were killed in a school shooting 2 weeks ago. Now, despite continued gun violence across the country, gun control has been a non-starter with Republicans. Some red states even weakening their gun laws. Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty joining us now live from Washington. And Andrew, former President Trump, his former running mate Mike Pence, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who just signed this bill allowing Floridians to carry a concealed weapon without a permit, they're all speaking tonight. Will they bring up the topic of guns, gun violence in America? What can we expect to hear tonight?
Yeah, well, Veronica, good afternoon. And it's interesting to note that this is actually going to be the first event where both Mike Pence and Donald Trump will be speaking in the same room since Donald Trump left office. And though we don't expect them to necessarily cross paths, it is going to begin a really interesting kind of week plus of the campaign. You can look at this map. We have the NRA convention this afternoon in Indianapolis. You mentioned Nashville, and it's interesting to note that both Pence and Trump will be in Nashville later tonight to address Republican National Committee donors. And then next week, they'll be out in Iowa, though Trump will give a video address. Pence will be in person speaking to a group of faith-based voters and an influential group that will be holding a confab next week. And so when it comes to what do we expect today, I think for Pence and Trump, I think the most interesting thing is going to be what sort of messaging differences there are between these two. We know that Donald Trump at times in his administration did things that quite honestly angered gun rights activists, things like banning bump stocks. He at one point was expressed support in strengthening red flag laws. And those are things it'll be interesting to see if Mike Pence brings those up. But you're right that this is coming after a number of mass shootings. It happened last year, just days after the Uvalde shooting. And so this is something we have seen before, and there traditionally has not been a lot of concessions when it comes to any sort of gun rights or any sort of gun control when it comes to these candidates. But what their message is in support of gun rights, I think is going to be their most prevalent theme throughout the afternoon, Veronica.
And Andrew, to your point, for those who've been pushing for more gun control, they often point the finger at the NRA, saying, it is the NRA's influence as to the reason why things aren't changing in this country. But bring us up to speed on all of this. How influential is the NRA right now?
Well, it's interesting. They had gone through a couple tough years because of some problems with their leadership. And it really culminated in 2018 when we saw the Parkland shooting and you saw some spending from gun control advocates that actually, for the first time, eclipsed spending from gun rights advocates. But you can see on this graphic that just kind of tracks political spending over the last few cycles here that gun rights groups have made up that difference. You see that one difference in that blue in 2018 was the 1 year where the control advocates actually spent more, but that spending advantages has been taken back by those gun rights groups. But I do think when we're talking about influence, it is interesting to note, you mentioned Ron DeSantis. He's not going to be there in person. Tim Scott's not. Nikki Haley is not. They're going to deliver video messages. And so I think that does go to a little bit to the point that this is not as influential as we've thought about for the past 2 decades, but this is still a really, really important group of voters for the Republican primary electorate. When it comes to the general, though, that's a little bit of a different story, Veronica.
Absolutely, and that chart that you showed us was really useful, breaking down, gun rights versus gun control and where the money is going in all of this. Andrew Rafferty reporting live from Washington. Andrew, thank you so much. So friends and family right now have been saying goodbye to the 5 people who were shot and killed Monday at a bank in Louisville, Kentucky. Services for Tommy Elliott and Deanna Eckert are today, and Elliott was the vice president of Old National Bank. He was also a close friend of Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. Eckert initially survived the shooting, but she later died in the hospital. A funeral mass is being held for Joshua Barrick tomorrow, and Jim Tutt Jr.'s service is being held on Sunday. Arrangements for Juliana Farmer have not yet been announced. 8 others were wounded in that attack, and police did kill the gunman. No word yet on a motive, but police say he told at least one person that he was suicidal. I want to get you to some developing news right now. We're learning more details about the leak of a highly classified military document. The suspected Air National Guardsman charged this morning in federal court over this. The judge ordering Jack Teixeira to remain behind bars until another hearing that will take place next week. Scripps News political correspondent Kevin Cirilli with more on these charges and how the evidence led to Teixeira.
The FBI has pressed charges against 21-year-old Jack Teixeira, a Massachusetts Air National Guardsman, charging him with unauthorized retention and transmission of national defense information and unauthorized removal of classified information and defense materials. Meanwhile, here in Washington, Attorney General Merrick Garland says that the investigation is still very much ongoing. Take a listen to what he said at a press conference earlier.
The Department of Defense is leading an important effort now to evaluate and review the national security implications, and most important, to conduct a review of the methods of access, accountability, and control procedures that the department has so that something like this can never happen again.
President Biden was asked about the breach and the leak in what many are comparing to the biggest government leak since Edward Snowden. Hundreds of pages of classified documents relating to government analysis of other nations, as well as military movements in Russia's war against the Ukraine, were made public by the 21-year-old. Take a listen to what President Biden told reporters earlier.
Well, I'm not concerned about the leakages, and I'm concerned that it happened. But there's nothing contemporaneous that I'm aware of that is of great consequence.
The leak has launched a broader conversation about access to classified documents from those with national security clearances. The Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, saying that they have conducted a review of our intelligence access, accountability, and control procedures within the department to inform our efforts to prevent this kind of incident from happening again. Kevin Cirilli reporting from the White House, Scripps News.
Kevin Cirilli reporting there for us. Coming up in your 3 p.m. Eastern hour of Scripps News Live, I'll be speaking with a former naval officer who's now a cybersecurity expert who has the same security clearance as Jack Teixeira. And he's going to explain what kind of information Teixeira had access to and why sites like Discord have become a hotbed for this kind of illegal activity. Again, he's going to join us live at 3:15 p.m. Eastern straight ahead. So the Justice Department has been asking the Supreme Court to step in and protect abortion access. The Biden administration filed an emergency application to the High Court asking it to pause parts of an appeals court ruling that would limit access to an abortion pill. The maker of the drug mifepristone also made the same emergency request to the Supreme Court. Let's get you right out to White House correspondent Haley Bull, who is live outside of the White House right now and has been tracking the story for us. So Haley, break down this Justice Department request for us. Why are they making it exactly, and what are they asking for here?
Good afternoon, Veronica. They are looking for quick action from the Supreme Court, asking the court to keep things as they are, or rather before these rulings, pending a review, warning that otherwise parts of the rulings this week will take effect at 1 a.m. Those are the sections that would prohibit the prescription through the mail and would require in-person doctor's visits as a condition. Now, in its filing today, the Justice Department stressed the lower court's actions are unprecedented, talked about the disruption and harm they believe that would ensue from this decision. Specifically, the department warns of what it calls chaos, saying the doses would be misbranded, something that would take months to fix, and generic versions would immediately no longer be approved. Now, I want to read part of that filing for you. It states, quote, if allowed to take effect, the lower court's order would thwart FDA's scientific judgment and undermine widespread reliance in a healthcare system that assumes the availability of mifepristone as an alternative to more burdensome and invasive surgical abortions. Those harms would be felt throughout the nation because mifepristone has lawful uses in every state, even those with restrictive abortion laws. It goes on to say the rushed and scattershot courses of this litigation since the district's court order is profoundly unsettling to drug sponsors, healthcare providers, patients, and the public, all of whom rely on the FDA's exercise of scientific judgment and orderly administration of the complex system of drug regulation. The administration has warned of its belief of what it says the impact would be on the FDA's decision-making process. Meanwhile, the pill manufacturer says in its filing, which was sought separately, quote, the result is an untenable limbo for Danco providers, for women, and for healthcare systems, all trying to navigate these uncharted waters, and all after plaintiffs waited years and years before claiming irreparable injury and a need for emergency injunction, voiding the decades-long status quo. That is a sentiment the Justice Department has echoed in their argument to the Supreme Court. The length of time that this drug has been approved by the FDA before these actions were sought. Now, the Justice Department also says in its filing, notable, that it believes this is the first time a court has taken an action like this on FDA conditions over disagreements around the FDA's safety judgment. Now, earlier this week, we heard from both Attorney General Merrick Garland and the Vice President talking about the potential implications of these lower court decisions. Listen.
It would deprive patients of a safe and effective medication to manage their reproductive health, and it would allow doctors to challenge FDA approval of any drug or any other federal action that allegedly injured third parties.
And I will say our administration is fighting on every front to do what we can and what we must to protect the American people and the integrity of the healthcare system in our country.
Meanwhile, the Alliance Defending Freedom, who's been a part of this, sees the lower court's decision as a, quote, significant victory. But the administration has vowed this is something they are going to keep fighting. Right now, we are waiting to see what the Supreme Court decides on this. Veronica?
All right, something we're going to be watching. Haley Bull reporting live for us from the White House. Haley, thank you so much. Now to Florida, where a bill banning abortion in the state after 6 weeks has now become the law. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis making good on a promise to sign that bill as soon as it hits his desk. And he did so last night, just hours after it cleared a vote in the Florida House. Still to come, after 2 name changes, the ownership of the Washington Commanders appears to be changing soon. The allegations and controversy surrounding owner Dan Snyder that ultimately reached the breaking point. We'll be right back.
Do you spend hours maintaining your gutters? Save that time with LeafGuard's maintenance-free system. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS. Mesh filters sit on top of your gutters, building up debris and eventually clogging. Then they need to be cleaned too. Honestly, your home should have been built with LeafGuard gutters. LeafGuard's wraparound hood deflects debris and keeps water away from your home. The one-piece seamless system is strong, 20% thicker than average, and built to last. Plus, LeafGuard is guaranteed to never clog for as long as you own your home. Right now, get a complete Leaf Guard system for only $99 down, $99 a month, and $99 installation. You'll also receive a $100 Visa gift card with a free gutter inspection and in-home estimate. Damage from clogged gutters can cost you thousands. Never worry about clogged gutters again. Don't wait, you've still got time. Call 1-833-2-GUTTERS today. That's 1-833-2-GUTTERS.
Sure, you'll teach her how to drive a car, then use Greenlight to power her independence with crash detection with 911 dispatch, family location sharing, and emergency SOS alerts. Invest in your best investment with Greenlight.
How does Klein Inspector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein Inspector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein Inspector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein Inspector.
Do you have a box of videotapes, film reels, or photos that are degrading? Legacy Box professionally converts them to DVDs, thumb drive, or the cloud. Legacy Box is simple and safe, with over 1 million satisfied customers. Visit legacybox.com.
But it wasn't the photos and it wasn't the video that changed my life. It was understanding the stories behind them.
You know, when you're ready, I'll have your baby for you. Like something that was meant to be.
There's good to it, there's a lot of bad to it, but that's life.
It worries me.
Brotherhood to me is everything.
We've opened up a whole new world.
Washington Commanders will reportedly be sold in the biggest sale of a North American professional sports team ever. The team's controversial owner, Daniel Snyder, has reportedly reached a tentative agreement to sell the football team for a record $6.05 billion. Now, during his 25-year tenure, Snyder was accused of sexual harassment and of operating a toxic workplace, among other things. National correspondent Maura Sirianni has more.
Yeah, that's billion with a B. This is an insane number, $6 billion. We're talking the highest price ever paid for a North American pro sports team. And when it comes to Dan Snyder, the writing was kind of on the wall here. So there has been reportedly a group of owners pushing for him to sell the Commanders. Now, the sale would mark the end of the Dan Snyder era, a 24-year run as owner of the Washington franchise. It's no secret, a portion of that tenure has been clouded by controversy and scandal. In 2020, the Washington Post reported 42 women alleged sexual harassment by Snyder or team executives. Then in 2021, following an investigation into claims of a toxic work culture, the NFL fined the Commanders $10 million for workplace misconduct. And then just last year, a Congressional House Committee report allegedly finding evidence the team had been underreporting ticket revenue to the NFL. Sports Illustrated reports to that. A team spokesperson responded, quote, "There has been absolutely no withholding of ticket revenue at any time by the team." Now, Josh Harris, who also co-owns the Philadelphia 76ers and the New Jersey Devils, is leading the investment group, which includes Magic Johnson and Mitchell Rales, looking to buy the Commanders team. So right now, the deal has not officially been signed. It still needs to go through a few more steps here and be approved by the team's owners. A few other things also have to happen. Of course, Harris would need to sell his minority ownership of the Pittsburgh Steelers before getting the Commanders. And let's talk more about that massive price tag. That reported $6 billion sale would top the previous record of $4.65 billion. That's also a huge number set when Rob Walton's group bought the Denver Broncos last year. Now, before that, the record was set in 2018 when the Carolina Panthers sold for $2.275 billion. So again, all of this and the sale of the Commanders needs approval from the rest of the league's owners, which we've learned could happen as soon as next month when they meet in Minneapolis. Back to you.
All right, Maura, thank you so much for that report. Well, Boeing says it's discovered a manufacturing issue with some 737 MAX aircrafts, but insists that the problem isn't an immediate safety issue. Boeing said a supplier used a non-standard manufacturing process during the installation of 2 fittings in the rear fuselage. And Boeing said a significant number of planes have been affected, but they wouldn't say exactly how many. All right, this just into Scripps News Live. The French Constitutional Council has approved President Macron's bill to raise the retirement age in France from 62 to 64. Now, this is a big victory for the French president, as thousands of protesters have demonstrated for weeks now, including yesterday in Paris, against the retirement reform plan. The French Constitutional Council determined that the bill does fall in line with the French Constitution. Scripps News correspondent Ollie Barrett has been tracking all the latest developments for us and joins us now live from Paris. And Ollie, we know that there have been several people out there protesting because they've been up in arms about these proposed changes. Now we know these changes have actually passed. What is the mood like right now where you're at in Paris?
Yeah, it's interesting because right here at the Constitutional Council, where the decision has been taken, authorities have banned protesting. And so there's a huge police presence here and a huge presence of journalists as well, but not at the moment any protesters. They're a little bit down the road from here where they're allowed to demonstrate, and they are demonstrating, and they say they will continue to demonstrate. Unions saying they think there would be protests against these pension reforms through the weekend. Unions also organising a major protest march and rally on May the 1st, Labour Day, as well. So certainly among those people who oppose these measures, they say that that opposition is not going to go away. The protests aren't going to stop. The demonstrations aren't going to go away. The flashpoints we expect, therefore, will continue. Now, the government, from its perspective, hopes that this is a really significant moment and that some of those critics of this pension reform bill will decide that the Constitutional Council, now that it's made this decision, has effectively ended the battle, has ended the fight, that they've lost in this particular argument and might now focus their attention elsewhere. But certainly right now, unions and many of those protesters are saying the battle isn't over, despite what is a significant moment for the government and its reform plans.
And Ollie, in moments like this, I think it's always helpful to get the backstory and all of this. If you could explain to folks in the United States why this is so upsetting for the French. You know, the retirement age here in the United States is 67. Has the retirement age always been lower in France? What is the backstory here?
It has been for a long time lower in France than it has been in many other European countries as well. I mean, if you look at the UK, the retirement age for many people right now is 66. It's going up to 67 for many people, and soon it's expected to go up to 68. The French for a long time have really safely guarded their retirement age. Part of that is because for a lot of French people, they don't have the private pensions that you might see in many other European countries, in the United States as well. So many people really rely on that state pension, and they feel that it's their entitlement to receive it at the age of 62. They don't think that waiting to 64 in many professions, particularly manual labour, is a fair thing to have to do. So it's always been controversial, any attempts to raise the pension age here in France. Emmanuel Macron and his government say it's simply not sustainable. They say that if the pension age remains where it is at 62, that within 10 years or so, the pension system will be completely unsustainable, completely unaffordable, will be in deficit, running into billions and billions of euros every single year. So he says something has to change, and soon. One of the other areas of criticism of the French government has been that opponents say they've forced this through in an undemocratic way. So that's another element that makes all of this so controversial.
But the French Constitutional Council has determined that this bill does fall in line with the French Constitution. So where do things lie in the meantime? What comes next for this bill?
Well, President Macron has a couple of weeks to sign this legislation into law, but we're actually hearing that that could happen within the next 48 hours or so. Next week, we think that President Macron will probably address the country at some point in some form and try and make the case again for these reform measures, try and explain to the country why he thinks they're necessary and fair. We also know that the Elysee Palace has invited the unions for a meeting with the president on Tuesday. Well, the unions are saying for now they won't be attending that meeting because they're going to continue their demonstrations and leading up to that big mass protest that they're trying to organise on May the 1st. So on the one hand, you'll have the government continuing to try and make the case, pushing ahead with this legislation now that the Constitutional Council has said that it's legal and appropriate. On the other side of the equation, the unions and many workers and protesters say that their fight continues.
All right, Ollie Barrett reporting live for us from Paris, France. Ollie, thank you so much. Coming up next on Scripps News Live, we're going to meet a woman who says that her health scare after childbirth led to her business.
I really was battling with depression, and I just wanted to feel good again.
Why she has been encouraging more Black women to adhere to the warning signs and take their health into their own hands.
You're looking pretty good, Mr. Johnson. But we need to take some x-rays today.
That's why.
Yes, x-rays are expensive, but the front desk said you recently enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan with extra benefits that now cover today's x-rays and cleaning costs.
Wow, okay.
Well, Medicare Parts A and B do not cover your routine dental coverage like cleanings, fillings, or x-rays. Yes, you have a Medicare Part C plan, commonly called Medicare Advantage. Medicare Part C plans cover everything in Part A and Part B, plus extra benefits like dental, vision, and hearing.
Wow. That's great that my plan includes dental coverage that helps pay for these costs.
Yes, Mr. Johnson. A Medicare Part C plan could include dental coverage that pays for routine dental exams and teeth cleanings, dental x-rays, fillings, tooth extractions, root canals, dentures, implants, and crowns.
If you're losing coverage, moving, or new to Medicare, call to speak with a licensed insurance agent. You don't get a plan with these benefits automatically, so it's always good to call to see if there's a plan with extra benefits available in your zip code. If you don't have a Medicare Part C plan, call now because there may be plans available with additional benefits that are simply not covered under Medicare Parts A and B, like routine dental coverage. In fact, 24 million Medicare beneficiaries do not have any dental coverage. Here's the good news. If you're on Medicare, you can call even if you called last year. We will check to see if there is a Part C plan available in your area with additional benefits. Remember, you don't get Medicare Part C benefits automatically, so call now for your free 2023 no-obligation Medicare benefits review. Just call 800-614-5203. 800-614-5203.
At Omaha Steaks, we do burgers differently. We take a premium aged steak like this and turn it into a pure ground burger like this. So this is actually a ribeye. This is a New York strip, top sirloin, beef brisket, and this is a filet mignon. For a limited time, our Burger Perfection flight comes with 20 big, juicy burgers, all for just $79.99, plus free shipping. Get it today at omahasteaks.com/TV. This is Burger Perfection, guaranteed.
Municipal bonds don't usually get the media coverage the stock market does. In fact, most people don't find them all that exciting. But if you're looking for the potential for consistent income that's federally tax-free, now is an excellent time to consider municipal bonds from Henyon & Walsh. If you have at least $10,000 to invest, call and talk with one of our bond specialists at 1-800-465-8465. We'll send you our exclusive bond guide, free, with details about how bonds can be an important part of your portfolio. Henyon & Walsh has specialized in fixed income and growth solutions for 30 years and offers high-quality municipal bonds from across the country. They provide the potential for regular income, are federally tax-free, and have historically low risk. Call today to request your free bond guide, 1-800-465-8465. That's 1-800-465-8465.
Bonobos presents A Course in Style with Justin Rose. Justin Rose, champion golfer with a champion swing. How does he do it? Well, let's take a closer look. Is it his flawless form, elite balance, consistent accuracy? Yes, and also those pants. Give me a little more of those pants, will you? Style, comfort, a great fit. These babies can do it all.
Wherever your tour takes you.
is the final day of Black Maternal Health Week, and all week long we've been discussing the disparities when it comes to Black and white mothers. Hannah McDonald of Scripps News Nashville spoke with a one-woman entrepreneur about her experiences, and she has this report.
Oh, it's so sweet.
Cruz is the apple of his mom's eye.
Yeah, like this cute picture, but you have no idea what I endured 5 minutes before, like.
Indigo Harris has her hands full with her almost 2.5-year-old. Taking care of herself and eating well is something she hasn't always prioritized.
I've always had a passion for it, but having my son being in this house during and post-pandemic, yeah, I really was battling with depression and I just wanted to feel good again. Walnuts, carrots, green onion.
Indigo changed her diet after finding out she was having a child.
I learned early on that I was going to be a single mom. And I'm like, whew, this is hard.
While she was pregnant, Indigo discovered Nashville Strong Babies. The Metro Public Health Program pairs families in certain zip codes with a care team for the first 18 months of a child's life.
At first, I'm like, oh, this is no fair. Why is everything changing? But it's not like happening to me, it happened for me.
The program gave her the confidence to start her food business, Inda Garden. This Black Maternal Health Week, she wants moms to know healthy living is within reach.
If you get WIC, use that. If you get Families First or EBT, use that.
Nashville's most recent public health data shows Black moms are dying at a higher rate than white or Hispanic moms. And 2 in 3 maternal deaths were preventable. Indigo says eating nutritious food helped her get through those hard first days of motherhood.
Like, just felt like the weight of the world was just on my shoulders. I feel lighter, I feel freer, and I have energy to do things like this.
I'm Hannah McDonald reporting.
Heavy rain in parts of Florida finally over, but cleaning up the damage is expected to take some time. Coming up after a quick break, we're going to hear from homeowners who are dealing with the unexpected right now. Also, we'll take you to the emotional reunion between a Colorado soldier who is finally back on American soil. We'll be right back.
Are you ready for a fresh new bath or shower? Well, now is the best time with free installation and no interest and no payments for 1 year. Hi, I'm Christina, and it's time to flip your old worn out bath or shower with Jacuzzi Bath Remodel today. Everyone knows the Jacuzzi brand. They're the most trusted name in water for over 60 years. But did you know they can install a gorgeous bath or shower that feels incredible in as little as 1 day? It's no stress and no mess with a lifetime warranty. Now let's talk beauty. You deserve to start and end your day in a beautiful space that feels great and is custom designed just for you. So call or go online now to see the Christina preferred designs like Canyon, Farm, and Urban. Now that's the total bathroom beauty that I love at a price you can afford. And how about safety? Like an ultra low profile, easy entry shower complete with grab bars and a custom designed seat. You deserve safety and peace of mind without sacrificing style. Because with all the worries in daily life, taking a shower shouldn't be one of them.
Every time I stepped over my old tub, I worried I might fall. I don't have those fears anymore. Jacuzzi Bath Remodel gave me a gorgeous shower that's safe too.
I've been trying to get him to remodel that bath for years. I called and they did in just 1 day.
And at a price we could afford.
With one call to Jacuzzi Bath Remodel, you can effortlessly transform that old, ugly eyesore into the stunning bath or shower of your dreams that you'll love for years to come.
Call or go online now to jacuzzibathremodel.com to get free installation. Plus, ask how you may qualify for no interest and no payments for 1 year. Go to jacuzzibathremodel.com or call 800-218-1279. That's 800-218-1279. Call now.
There's a better way to begin your mornings.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Rush.
On the stories that will shape each day.
There's a new study that might make you feel a little bit better.
So you can get on with yours. Morning Rush. Weekday mornings starting at 7, 6 Central. Only on Scripps News.
Hey there, welcome back to to Scripps News Live. It's 31 minutes after the hour on this Friday. Happy Friday to you. Good to see you. I'm Veronica Cruz. Let's get you caught up on the day's top stories right now. So this afternoon, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced charges against more than 24 members of a notorious Mexican cartel. According to Garland, leaders of the Sinaloa cartel have been named in the indictments, as well as the cartel's chemical suppliers, lab managers, traffickers, financiers, and others.
8 of those defendants are now in the custody of our international partners. We will be seeking their extradition to the United States to face charges in federal court. And we will be working closely with our partners in the government of Mexico to seek the extradition of other defendants. The United States government is using every tool at its disposal to combat the fentanyl epidemic.
Also named in the indictments are 3 sons of the infamous drug trafficker El Chapo, men who the DOJ say have earned a reputation of being more violent and vicious than their notorious father. New details have been surfacing about the financial relationship between Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and a Republican mega donor. According to ProPublica, billionaire Harlan Crow bought 3 real estate properties from Justice Thomas back in 2014. Thomas received more than $133,000 from the sale, but he failed to report it. Ethics law experts say that his actions appear to violate the law. This all follows an earlier ProPublica report that Thomas didn't disclose gifted vacations from Crow worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, the Supreme Court rejected an emergency plea from private universities to block a $6 billion student loan settlement. Student loan borrowers sued 3 schools, arguing those loans should have been canceled because the institutions misled them. A judge sided with the borrowers last year to have their debt canceled. The colleges wanted the high court to hold the settlement, but the justices refused. This case is unrelated to lawsuits challenging President Biden's student loan forgiveness program. Now to Indiana, where officials say that an industrial fire that forced thousands of people to evacuate their homes has been fully extinguished. It all started Tuesday at a plastic recycling plant in Richmond. Officials say they will now test the air and the water to determine whether residents can return home safely. Many have already expressed concerns about the fire's potential impact on their health. And so far, the EPA hasn't detected toxic compounds, but the state fire marshal says that the smoke plumes were definitely toxic. The cause of the blaze remains unclear right now, but some city officials are blaming the business owner for not addressing the factory's fire hazards. More than 24 flights in and out of Alaska have been disrupted due to an erupting volcano in Russia. The active volcano sits in far eastern Russia, which isn't far from the last frontier state. As a precaution, Alaska Airlines canceled the flights yesterday. Officials say the volcano's ash cloud drifted over Alaska's airspace, making flying even more dangerous. Ash is not expected to fall on Alaskan communities. Neighborhoods across Broward County, Florida are drenched right now. Heavy rainfall this week led to significant flooding. It even forced schools and a major airport to shut down. Sophia Hernandez with Scripps News Miami Fort Lauderdale spoke with homeowners who are looking at the damage right now.
It's never gotten this bad before.
Roxana Nadici has been living in her North Lake home with her grandmother for 7 years, and Wednesday's flooding...
It was probably like up to here yesterday of water. It was full of water.
Left parts of her home destroyed.
Here's the garage area. The water came up to like about here, and now we're just trying to get everything out of here.
I looked at that bar where we put the shutters. It was up to there. Then it started coming into the house.
Gilberto Segarra has lived in his house for 14 years, and even 3 hurricanes didn't flood his home the way this week's severe weather did.
And I couldn't even see the yard. It was just a big pond. Now, 12 inches straight across. That's a lot.
His wife is undergoing chemo treatments, and since she's been going through a tough time, he's been working around the clock to try and make her comfortable and get the water out.
It was an experience, but if you live in South Florida, expect the unexpected because it could rain on one side of the street and dry on the other.
We are here in the North Lakes neighborhood of Hollywood, Florida, where you can see that water is still an issue on Thursday. Some homeowners even needing to push their cars out of the roadways. They were stalled on Wednesday evening.
During the really bad part of the storm, I could see it floating, and all I'm thinking is, oh my God, I hope my car is not toast.
Teresa Page has lost her home during Hurricane Andrew. She's now lived here for the past 5 years and says while she was prepared for flooding, she didn't expect what she saw.
Last night, the waves were so bad, it sounded like it was an ocean. And because I have a wall here by my apartment, you can hear it splashing and flying up in the air. It was coming. It was coming. It was scary.
Residents across Broward County continue to evaluate damages and hope the worst is over.
You know, this is the way it is in South Florida.
In Hollywood,
Sophia Hernandez, Scripps News.
And so to come on Scripps News Live, a new study found that some Americans prefer to juggle multiple full-time jobs. Yeah, we're going to show you why overemployment is now gaining popularity. Also, if you haven't filed your taxes yet, you are now up against the clock. Why some people are scrambling to meet another crucial IRS deadline. That's next.
No matter what school looks like, no matter where kids are learning, there is still one thing we can be sure of. Too many kids in America are hungry.
We're all just a happy little family. And then when COVID started, it started getting harder and harder. When I first heard of COVID-19, I was kind of scared.
A lot of fear was, how are we going to pay the rent? What are we going to do about electricity? What are we going to do about food and everything?
And then they shut down the school.
The only time they eat is at school. So when you take that food source away with a family that's already facing food insecurity, it has astronomical effects.
Kids in your community and across America need you now more than ever. But no matter where they are, No Kid Hungry will be there to help.
With a gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day, you'll help provide healthy meals and hope to kids in schools and communities across America.
This is where those children are getting the bulk of their food, calories, and nutrition for the day, the week, the year.
Please join us today to help end child hunger in America. Call or go online right now with your gift of only $19 a month. Use your credit card, and you'll receive this No Kid Hungry t-shirt to show you're a part of the team that's helping feed kids and change lives.
What we will do is make sure that no one goes hungry on our watch.
Thank you.
Now, when more families than ever are struggling to feed their kids, you can help provide access to healthy meals and hope for their future. So please call this number right now to join me in helping hungry kids, or go online to helpnokidhungry.org and help feed hungry kids today.
Attention all business owners. If you had W-2 employees during the COVID-19 pandemic, you may be entitled to up to $26,000 per employee with the Employee Retention Tax Credit. The deadline to file your claims is approaching. Call now to see if your business qualifies. This approved payroll tax refund program from the U.S. Treasury Department is set up to reward business owners who kept employees on payroll during the pandemic. There is no limit on the amount of funding. Plus, you can get access to your cash in a matter of weeks. You want a trusted partner who understands the IRS guidelines. ERC experts are standing by to help your business claim your COVID refund. You may be entitled to up to $26,000 per employee. This quick and easy call can get your business the money it deserves. Don't miss the deadline to file your claims. Just call 800-360-1106. That's 800-360-1106.
How does Klein Inspector get among the most big verdicts and settlements of any law firm in the country? Because Klein Inspector is an award-winning team with 5 doctor lawyers, the most of any firm in the United States. And that's why the New York Times calls Klein Inspector a powerhouse law firm. So if a defective product, motor vehicle accident, or medical malpractice caused a catastrophic injury, call Klein Inspector.
I was curious about trick plays and if
local hero, national champ, now he's home and expected to save the franchise. Hey guys, am I dreaming or can we actually win this thing?
What are you in for?
I ate a toy. Turns out what goes in doesn't always come out.
Why wait for more surprises? Get 90% cash back on eligible vet bills for accidents and illnesses with a Pumpkin pet insurance plan. Visit pumpkin.care.
Americans have until July 17th to claim old tax refunds from 2019. The IRS is saying nearly 1.5 million of you have yet to claim your refund, totaling almost $1.5 billion. The agency has a 3-year deadline for people to claim that money, and the deadline and the federal tax filing deadline are typically on the same day. But officials have extended the deadline this year because of the COVID pandemic. Now, while some are scrambling to claim their old refund, procrastinators out there, you have until Tuesday to file your 2022 tax return. The IRS has been warning some filers will receive a smaller refund this year, and that's because data shows the average refund is $300 less than last year, a 10% decline, which is due partly to pandemic era relief programs that are expiring. In other news, we know that remote work has become a new normal since the start of the pandemic. Some employees say that staying home has improved their work-life balance, but in other cases, people have been trying to juggle 2 full-time jobs at once. Scripps News economics correspondent Bianca Ficini explains what's driving this so-called overemployment trend.
Remote work is nothing unusual in this day and age. 3 years since pandemic lockdowns, Americans are still fond of working from home. In fact, they're willing to sacrifice pay to skip out on in-office work. Nearly 1/3 of workers, according to a survey by Robert Half, would take a cut of up to 18%. Numbers like those may be because of the practice you see on your screen: overemployment, or having 2 or more full-time, fully remote jobs at once. This is more than just a side hustle. Think logging into multiple meetings at once, using more than one work laptop, and pretending to be working a full workday for multiple companies. The trend has recently gotten increased attention, but the idea isn't necessarily new.
Overemployment came about because people were largely in the tech industry using employment as a way to get ahead of their finances. Some people were paying off school loans. Some people were paying down on their car or paying off their mortgage.
Mark Anthony Dyson is a professional career coach and founder of the Voice of Job Seekers, a career consulting service in Chicago. He says inflation and fears of layoffs are driving more Americans to take on multiple full-time positions. A resume builder survey of 1,000 fully remote workers found 79% of respondents were overemployed in the past year. About 30% were making 6 figures collectively. A separate Monster survey found the top reason people were overemployed last year was they felt they weren't making enough money in their main job. While the perks of making more money and staying remote sound promising, overemployment may also have some downsides. Career coaches say the risk of falling behind in either job are higher. And according to Dyson, juggling jobs in secrecy may also add unwanted stress.
Some employers are able to see whether you move away from the keyboard or not. There are others that just monitor that you're working and that you're logged in and you're engaged with the team.
So how are Americans pulling this off?
I have something to recommend. It's called a mouse mover.
Take mouse movers or jigglers, for example. The small devices go under computer mouse and keep the cursor active without having to touch it. Others resort to premium keyboards and video screen and mouse switches, which allow employees to work from one desk and easily switch back and forth from devices. Dyson says employers' reactions to finding out their employees are overemployed are mixed, from some understanding the current financial situation to others firing workers. Like this viral LinkedIn post from last year, where a Utah-based software company executive wrote about firing 2 engineers for overemployment. Adding in his post, quote, "You're very likely stealing a job from someone who wants and needs it." For now, career coaches believe overemployment won't disappear, but eventually will evolve.
There are some instances where I've talked to job seekers where they were laid off, but then they were offered a contract to keep working. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily a trend for right now, but I think in the future that a large part of the work sector will become contract workers. And that will alleviate the employer of the benefits of employment.
Another twist to a workforce still unwinding from the pandemic. Bianca Ficini, Scripps News.
Coming up next on Scripps News Live, we're going to show you how Hollywood's next generation of stunt artists has been leaving their mark on the industry. We'll have that for you next.
For veterans recovering from the wounds of war, supporting one another is a lifesaver.
I served in the United States Army in Vietnam, and that's when I stepped on a landmine that resulted in the traumatic amputation of both of my legs and my left arm above the elbow. I was alive, but I didn't know what the rest of my life had in store for me. Multiple deployments have caused a huge problem with those that served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and it's difficult for them to come back and adjust to civilian life.
There were moments of frustration. You can't do this anymore, you can't go here anymore. I absolutely felt like I lost my purpose.
I was looking at a long period where I wasn't going to be able to do anything for myself. I just didn't want to be here.
Many veterans feel abandoned or alone till DAV steps into their life.
For 100 years, DAV, Disabled American Veterans, has been supporting veterans and their families in their time of need by helping them receive the care and benefits they've earned. But your help is vital to keeping this promise alive.
The biggest struggle is spending the rest of your life in a wheelchair. DAV showed me it was okay to be a disabled veteran.
The Disabled American Veterans made me feel useful again.
DAV came in when I was still flat on my back and got me through that rough state that I was in.
When you call or go online with your pledge of just $19 a month, we'll send you this DAV blanket as a way you can share your support.
If I can reach out and share with other veterans what I've been through, that's a grand opportunity in DAV. It can really make a difference in the lives of many of these veterans.
Please call or go online to helpdav.org and donate now. They've given their all for us. Please open your heart and give what you can to them. There are so many more disabled veterans who still need your support. Please call now or give at helpdav.org. Thank you, and God bless you.
This bakery needs new equipment fast to keep up with demand. So they're going to On Deck, the online lender that makes it easy to choose your loan and, if approved, get funds as soon as the same day. Your loan is on deck.
Confused by all the Camp Lejeune toxic water commercials? Let me answer some of your questions.
Are claims filed against the U.S. Marine Corps?
No. The U.S. government has set aside billions of dollars for those who have suffered. The Marine Corps will not be impacted.
Will a Camp Lejeune claim affect my VA benefits?
No. According to the VA, your right to VA benefits will remain intact. If you have questions about a Camp Lejeune claim, call the Driscoll firm now for a free consultation. 1-800-273-4800.
Do you have a box of videotapes, film reels, or photos that are degrading? Legacy Box professionally converts them to DVDs, thumb drive, or the cloud. Legacy Box is simple and safe, with over 1 million satisfied customers. Visit legacybox.com.
This is a show with range.
In the know.
Today, we're going to talk about crypto.
In the now.
Wild world of online real estate.
In the next.
Weaponized robots are truly becoming a thing in our military.
In the loop. Tonight at 9/8 Central, only on Scripps News.
49 minutes after the hour now, a new generation of Hollywood stunt workers changing the industry from the ground up with new ideas, new methods, and a new mindset about creating the best and the biggest stunts. Coming up on Scripps News documentary series In Real Life, entertainment correspondent Casey Mendoza spent some time behind the scenes with stunt workers, including the team behind the Oscar-winning movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. Take a look.
What do you mean by funny face punches?
Yeah, it's just funny.
Or is it this one?
Here.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. You got set? And 3, 2, 1, action! All right, hey, reset. All right, let's cut. We all come together for the same cause.
Because of course, you know.
And that is to spread martial arts to the world.
Daniel Ma and brothers Andy and Brian Lay are the trio behind Martial Club. You might recognize them from Everything Everywhere All at Once, the Academy Awards' most decorated Best Picture winner in over a decade. But before working on a film that broke awards season records, they started out 10 years ago on YouTube, teaching themselves fight choreography, cinematography, and editing.
Wow, it all looks so cool. And Casey Mendoza joins us now live from Chicago. Casey, what was it here? What made you want to take this deeper dive into the world of stunt workers? So interesting.
Yeah, well, Veronica, I love when I cover reporting, really highlighting a lot of behind the scenes work, whether it's video editing, writing, but one thing that I've really learned in my work is that stunt work has increased sevenfold over the past 4 decades. And, you look at movies like Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, The Batman, all of these superhero and action films, and none of those movies could be done without the work of stunt workers. So, one of my goals with this documentary was to really highlight the behind the scenes creative and safety work that goes behind the scenes to make your favorite movies happen. And I just had such a blast, listening to people's stories and learning all about the technical filmmaking work that goes into stunts.
Looking good, Casey. We're watching some of the video, and it definitely looks like you're having a blast there. So, of course, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, one of the biggest movies of the past year, one of the biggest movies, really of our lifetimes when you take into consideration the AAPI cast that was in this film. And, of course, I know that you're a fan of this film, but what was it like getting to meet the stunt team behind that movie? What was it like getting to participate in some of those stunts?
Well, the part where you just saw me learning martial arts, it is hard, intensive work. And they taught me a basic form. This isn't in the documentary, but I kept saying to myself, I felt like a normal person during the Olympics. But, beyond the fun, it was so wonderful to learn and to see in person all of the passion that goes beyond, wanting to highlight martial arts in this way. The Martial Club, they're so passionate, again, about the work that they do. And there are many homages and callbacks to some of the other biggest martial arts icons of our time, Jackie Chan, Bruce Lee, and to be able to see that drive and that creativity and, desire for good storytelling along with good fight scenes made me appreciate Everything Everywhere All at Once even more.
Yeah, I can totally understand that. And I was watching those stunts that you did, and I understand that you got to put out fires, and of course you learned the martial arts, and it was just so awesome to watch. And I watch all of this, and I think, you know what? This is the reason why I'm a journalist, and I'm not a stunt worker. Casey Mendoza reporting live from Chicago. Casey, thank you. And don't forget, you can catch this new episode of In Real Life Sunday night. It airs at 9 Eastern right here on Scripps News. Well, a soldier finally reunited with his wife, those 2 kids, the family's fur baby, after a break. What he is describing as the toughest part of his return home. We're going to have his emotional reunion next.
Hi, I'm Kirk Kaiser, and did you know the average funeral costs around $10,000? And if you don't have enough insurance to cover funeral costs, credit card debt, and other expenses, your family is going to get stuck with the bill. Don't let that happen. Call right now. And if you're over 50, you can get up to $30,000 in affordable life insurance, and your acceptance is guaranteed. That's right. If you're over 50, you can't be turned down for this insurance, regardless of your health. Plus, there's no medical exam and no health questions. Your rate will never go up. Your coverage will never go down. And rates start as low as $5 a week. Your coverage begins as soon as your application is received. Don't wait until it's too late.
Just call 800-379-8435.
Coverage is guaranteed regardless of your health and cannot be canceled without your approval. Don't leave your family with a huge bill for your funeral. With one fast and easy call, get up to $30,000 in affordable life insurance to help cover funeral expenses and credit card debt, and maybe even leave something for your kids and your grandkids. Remember, if you're over 50, you can't be turned down, regardless of your health. There's no medical exam and no health questions. Best of all, your rates start as low as $5 a week, and your rate will never increase. Nothing is more important than family. So don't leave them with a lot of bills to pay when you're gone. Don't leave your family with a lot of bills to pay for your funeral. Call right now. Acceptance is guaranteed. Call right now.
Call now. 800-379-8435. That's 800-379-8435.
military family known for their viral deployment videos has been reunited. Diane Derby with Scripps News Colorado spoke with the family about how their videos helped them cope through their long months apart and how they're now adjusting to life together once again.
Whether it's a long-awaited homecoming or their conversations on their home security cameras while their soldier was deployed. The Dorn family has made millions of people smile. One of their latest videos shows the moment their dog got to see him for the first time in 6 months.
You get that his normal bark to answer the door, and then came up to me, sniffed me, and then realized who I was. And then it almost looks like he's hugging me in the video when he jumps up on me. And then,
he was hugging you.
Yeah.
He was. He was for sure.
And now they're settling back in as a family of 4.
Jordan, you have all your girls piled on you.
I sure do.
Just days earlier, we were there as they were finally reunited.
I was definitely speed walking through the terminal to get out. I was kind of like every corner that I'd go around, like, oh, they're there yet? I had to brace myself for Adeline's, her almost tackling me, and then catching her, and then catching Mila. And it was pretty surreal.
What did you say to Daddy when you jumped on him that moment? Did you say anything?
Nothing.
What did you do?
Just cried. I guess.
You were just facing his arm, right?
A happy moment they recognize after 3 deployments can come with challenges too.
Christy definitely kind of gives me a little bit of space to adjust, because I think the hardest part for me is coming home and trying to help out as much as possible, but not ruining her routine that she's already established and has made it work for her for the last 6 months. The silverware. Now the silverware is in a different spot, so I got corrected by Mila about I put the forks in the wrong spot. So I'm trying to not step on her toes with what she's been doing, like cake and ice cream before bed. I think it's a bad idea.
Hi, Dad. Love you. We really like your haircut.
When he was gone, Dorn's wife, Christy, started to create videos showing the world how they connected. She says it was her way to find happiness in the sadness of the separation.
This was just a very lonely time for me. You know, it's hard. And I tip my hat off to all those single moms out there, those other military wives that have to go through this too, because it's not easy holding down the fort for your whole entire family.
You didn't remember what I looked like.
But it's these moments, this joy, that they hold on to in the long wait to be together again.
Look at Mom.